In this video, we will look at every king and queen who ruled the British Empire in the 20th century from the second half of Queen Victoria's reign right up to the present day. The 20th century was an age of huge social, political and technological change, but also one where the British Empire went from being the greatest the world had ever known to effectively being Britain itself. So how did the British royals fare? Let's find out. First, we have Queen Victoria, who ruled from 1837 until 1901 when Victoria came to the throne. The United Kingdom was still very much a constitutional monarchy with the Prime Minister holding the real power. However, by the end of her reign, she had come to be seen as the embodiment of the nation, and her image was plastered everywhere from teacups to postage stamps. This cult of personality around the Queen was largely thanks to her own efforts, as she became increasingly detached from her ministers and took a keen interest in the running of the country. Despite this, she remained a constitutional monarch throughout her long reign, which saw many great moments for Britain, including the abolition of slavery in the British Empire in 1833, the introduction of the metric system into Britain and the first flights by both airships and aeroplanes. Her later years were dominated by the growth of the British Empire, which at its greatest extent during Victoria's reign covered almost a quarter of the landmass of the earth and ruled over almost a quarter of the human race. Next up is King Edward VII, who reigned from 1901 until 1910. Unlike his mother, Edward had little interest in ruling or indeed being popular. Instead, he spent his time smoking cigars, driving his motor car and having affairs. His relationship with his counselors was fraught with arguments, particularly over the issue of Irish Home Rule, which Edward eventually caved on before his death. He oversaw the beginning of the 20th century and the early part of Britain's decline as a global power. As such, he presided over the loss of many colonies to growing American influence, as well as seeing the beginnings of the end of the British Raj in India, following Edward's death without a direct heir. His granddaughter Mary became queen in 1910. She had been born a princess of the United Kingdom, and was the daughter of Edward's eldest son, George, who had been excluded from the line of succession due to his scandalous divorce from Mary of Teck, an option sadly not open to women at the time. Mary's accession caused a constitutional crisis as it meant that her cousin, the former heir presumptive, King George V, now became King George VI. The interwar years were a difficult time for the royal family, as they tried to adapt to a changing world. Mary struggled to come to terms with the abdication of her cousin Edward, who had chosen to give up the throne rather than give up his beloved Mrs. Simpson. Throughout the Second World War, Mary and her family undertook a relentless program of public appearances to raise morale, which contributed greatly to their popularity. After the war, she suffered from ill health, and following an appendix operation in 1953, she died peacefully at the age of 55. Next, we have George VI, who reigned from 1936 to 1952, following the abdication crisis. George found himself king at the age of 62. He had never married, and so the question of an heir was pressing. In 1948, his younger daughter, Princess Margaret, was born, giving him a much-needed boost after a difficult start to his reign. However, in 1951, he had a serious lung infection and was forced to spend several months resting at his beloved Royal Lodge in Windsor. On February 6, 1952, at the age of 56, King George VI died at his beloved Royal Lodge, Windsor, probably of a pulmonary embolism brought on by his heavy smoking. It is believed that his ghost still walks the corridors of Windsor Castle to this day. Now we have Queen Elizabeth II, who reigned from 1952 to 2022. Elizabeth became queen at the age of 25, inheriting a post-war empire in decline. She saw Britain lose one colony after another, including India in 1947, Ghana in 1957, and Malaya in 1959. However, she presided over a period of great social change, including the decolonization of the British Empire, the introduction of decimal currency, and the UK's entry into the European Economic Community. Over the course of her 70-year reign, she met with 14 prime ministers, with the first being Winston Churchill, who had briefly served under her father and would serve again under her as foreign secretary. The most significant event of her early reign was the 1953 coronation, which was watched by millions around the world. During the 1960s, the monarchy's popularity waned somewhat as the younger members of the family, including Princess Margaret and the Queen's children, sought to break free of royal tradition. However, in 1977, the Queen's Silver Jubilee helped to turn around perceptions of the monarchy, and by the end of the century, the Queen and her husband, Prince Philip, had become hugely popular with the British people once more. They saw the end of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century, which saw them become the longest reigning monarch and consort in British history. The Queen died in September 2022 after a 70-year reign, making her the longest reigning monarch in British history. Next up, we have King Charles III, who is still reigning today. At the time of recording, Charles became Prince of Wales in 1958, a position he held for 64 years until his mother's death. Although initially unpopular as a man who had led a sheltered life, he has since become a well-loved and respected figure. Following his accession to the throne, the United Kingdom has entered into a new constitutional convention whereby the monarch is no longer styled King or Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, but instead King or Queen of the United Kingdom and of Northern Ireland with the title Great Britain being dropped in favor of the United Kingdom, which includes both England and Scotland. While the United Kingdom has no official national anthem, there are two commonly used tunes associated with the British monarchy, both of which date back to the 18th century. The first is God Save the King, which is the official anthem of the United Kingdom and the wider Commonwealth. The second is My Heart Will Go On, which dates back to the 18th century and was originally a song about unrequited love. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to learn more about historic events.